Hello, it's Tom Morgan here with another weekly update in the run-up to Christmas, and it doesn't seem like there's any let-up or slowdown in the pace of things being announced. I know I said last week it was a little bit slow. I think that was just either bad timing or everybody paused for breath before doing a bunch of stuff this week, because there's definitely been things happening this week, kind of all through the week that have been interesting, and it's been sometimes a kind of challenge to keep up with them. And that actually nicely brings me on to the first thing I wanted to talk about, which is the big news of this week, really for developers, especially bot developers in this space, and anyone doing anything like that. And that is that the bot framework, Microsoft's bot framework, is now in GA. It's now called Azure Bot Service, and so is the Language Understanding Intelligence Service, LUIS. That is also in GA. I have literally just put out a blog post about this, which I'll go through whilst the ink is still wet on it, and it's still fresh in my head. I wanted to get the blog post out kind of so I could link to it and talk about it in this video as well. It felt weird to do it the other way around because there's some interesting stuff. Now, I don't want to go over again what the bot framework is and what LUIS is. LUIS is the AI part, but I've definitely talked about it before, and if not, just kind of search on the web. I've done some videos about it as well. So the bot service is not called the bot service anymore, and it's called Web App Bot in Azure. Now, I think Microsoft is still talking about it as bot service. What I'm trying to say is if you're going to Azure to build a new bot, you need to be searching for Web App Bot. Slightly confusing, but I get why they've done it. It kind of makes sense. That is what you're building. You're building a bot built around a web app. That totally makes sense. There's some cool stuff that's come with it going into GA. So new locations. So you can now host your bot service or your web app bot. You can now host it out of 9 different regions. So you've got West US, East US, West Europe, and South Asia. And then there's new deployments in North Europe, Australia, Southeast, Australia East, Brazil, South, and East Asia. So that's it's good for a number of reasons actually. So locations is always a kind of a double win. So you get a performance win by putting your bot service in the right location, close to where lots of your users are. You'll get performance gains. But for many companies as well, it's really important that they know where their data lives. And certainly if you think about bots and the bot service, there's a lot of interactions with customers that happen. So there's a lot of chat transcript and all that stuff. You want to, if that's important to you, that it stays in the right location, the right region, maybe for regulatory or compliance reasons, then it's important to be able to choose the right location. So it's good that kind of Microsoft see this as an important part of going to GA. And coming out of preview is kind of support for multiple regions. There's also pricing information. Now, don't panic. There is a free pricing tier. So Microsoft always said with the bot service, they've said all along, and I've asked them this before, they've always said, there's going to be a free pricing tier. And then there is. It's free. It's free for up to 10,000 messages a month, which is quite a lot of messages. And you don't get any SLA with that. So there is also another pricing tier. It's called S1 standard, which is priced at a number of dollars or whatever your equivalent is per 1,000 messages. So I'm looking at it right now. For me, it's 37 cents per 1,000 messages, which I think sounds pretty good. Given that you'd have to be on, you're going to have to be either you care about the SLA and it's worth it for the SLA, or you're sending more than 10,000 messages a month, in which case it makes sense to flip over, and then you're paying, nearly around about $4 to kind of enter the S1 at 10,000 messages a month. So if you're doing it commercially, then there's a commercial model there for doing it, or if you really want the SLA or you need the SLA, it's nice that actually it scales right the way down. It doesn't start at like $4 for 10,000. It doesn't there's a lot of overlap with the free tier. So if the SLA is important to you, you can scale right down and be paying, cents, parts of dollars per 1,000 messages, which is cool. The other thing that's big and changed around this is that the bot framework dashboard is going to go away. So bot functionality is now done in Azure. It's done as part of Azure Web Apps. That means that the framework and the dashboard, the bot framework dashboard, the dev.botframework.com, is going to be retired, and it's time to move all your bots out of there and into Azure. Now, you've got a while to do it. You've got until the end of March 2018, but that's an important point, at which I guess the functionality will get kind of turned off and the bots will stop working. I don't know. But the messaging at the moment is that bots that are currently set up in the bot framework dashboard should be migrated over to Azure, and that should happen by the 31st of March 2018. So Microsoft have got some tooling to help you do that. There's a migrate button. If you go to the bot framework dashboard now for your bots, you'll notice there's a migrate button against each one, and that will kind of do that process. There's a number of different things that will happen, and I've gone through it in the blog. It kind of depends on the type of bot it is, what channels you've got, what other interactions with other APIs you've got, and stuff like that. So it looks like they've kind of covered all the bases and thought of everything. And if it does go wrong, there is also a rollback button you can hit and get back to where you were, and then try it again, presumably. So I'd say maybe don't leave it until the 30th of March before you do the migration. So give yourself a chance to be able to use that rollback button if you need to, and make some changes, or reach out to Microsoft on a case by case. That's going to be a much easier process to do if you're not bang up against the 31st of March deadline, and also you won't be waiting in line with everyone else who was also bang up against that deadline. So smart money is on migrating as soon as possible, I think. And in the blog post, I just wanted to call out and say a thank you really to the bot framework dashboard. So for many people, myself included, really that dashboard is where the first big introduction to being able to build bots at scale, to build bots very quickly and very easily. They've done a really good job in making what is a complicated and complex sort of playing field, and really leveling it out and making it very easy to consume, making it really democratized, almost as a service. So it's been a really important part of bringing conversational bots and conversational AI to the masses, and I think it's been really important part, and I just want to say it's really appreciated from this side of the fence as a developer, what the work they've done there, and how usable it's been, and how quickly it came to market. It's been excellent. So thanks to everyone involved in that. Well done. I think it's been really important. And I quoted Scott Hanselman badly by saying, us as people building bots, as bot developers, really have been abstracting on the shoulders of giants, which is a Scott Hanselman phrase. Kind of started, melding from, standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, software developers abstract on the shoulders of giants, and that's definitely true with the bot framework dashboard. So LUIS has also gone to GA from preview as well. So there's been some shifts and some big uplifts in the number of intents and entities that you can create. So 500 intents and 100 entities. Again, a bit like the bot framework, it's now available in multiple regions. Again, very important for kind of keeping all that information about intents and utterances. And also there's some more language support as well, which I know has really been asked for lots of people. So multiple language support. So pre-built entities are now also supported in French and Spanish. Pre-built domains are also supported in Chinese. And there's 7 new languages for phrase suggestions that you can use to kind of help customize and fine-tune the vocabulary. So they are Chinese, Spanish, Japanese, French, Portuguese, German, and Italian. So really big kind of play in the multiple language space there, and multi-region. It's really good to see. It's really important that as this stuff matures and as it goes from these preview to GAs, it's really important that we think about more than just English, right? And so much of the world isn't English speaking, and it's very important that we recognise that and don't forge forward without like going sideways and being more inclusive as well. So really good to see that happening. All right, so I've spoken for a full 10 minutes about the first item I wanted to talk to you today. So I need to up the pace a little bit, but it was a big announcement, right? So big news, so it was worth talking about. So a couple of days ago, actually just before this announcement about the bot framework, which kind of worked out really well, I did a quick 10-minute video walkthrough for Modality Labs, who are part of Modality Systems, who I work for, and it's around building a bot in less than 10 minutes, and it uses Q&A Maker. So I know I've talked about Q&A Maker before. If you want to see a walkthrough of how that's done, I put a link to it in the show notes, so you can do that. Just kind of goes through using Q&A Maker and an FAQ page to come up with something kind of very quickly that works. It's not like a perfect solution, and it would need work, I think, to do in the real world, but it's a good, shows you what's possible, shows you what you can do with very little time. It's a good Christmas project, which is why I'm keen to get it out before the Christmas period. So artificial intelligence, we know it's one of Microsoft's big bets, and so we're starting to see some of the work and the research that Microsoft have done come through in lots of different sort of streams, and one of those is productivity, and there's huge gains to be made in productivity by adding in artificial intelligence, I think. So some of these, there's a new blog post out written by the corporate vice president of the Office team, whose name I always mess up, so I apologise, Kirk Koenigsbauer. So he is talking about some of the ways in which AI is going to come to Office. So one of those is Excel, and it's about taking data and applying smart insights and smart artificial intelligence to big bits of data. So pulling out insights from data sets, saying, well, the data you're already looking at, like, show me interesting charts. And we've seen some of this in Power BI, actually, like, make me charts that are interesting based on this data, or pull out insights, pull out anomalies, give me a different perspective on this data that I might not have thought about before. And that's all based on machine learning, and it's artificial intelligence, and it is super useful, and it is a good application in the productivity space. Another really good idea, actually, that I wish I'd thought of, but I didn't, is what they're doing in Word, which is around, they're calling it master company lingo with machine learning. What they're talking about is, if you've got a document, an internal company document, and it's got words and phrases or acronyms in it, and I imagine Microsoft is really bad for this, because Microsoft have a ton of different acronyms. And I can totally imagine, as a new starter to Microsoft, looking through a document and just being completely bamboozled by the number of different acronyms and the number of different phrases that are just not understood, because they're not common terms. Now, I've previously written a bot, actually, to take Microsoft's acronyms and tell you what they are. This is one step further. It's built into Word, and it uses Delve, which is a really smart idea, actually. It uses Delve. So Delve is part of the Microsoft Graph, and it's insights about files, folders, meetings, information that's happening across your tenant, your Office 365 tenant. So what they're doing is they're kind of scanning and crowdsourcing all these documents that you have in your SharePoint, that you're emailing to each other, that is in your Office space, and then they are cross-referencing. So they are pulling that information about, if you've got let's say you've got an acronym that is described in one document across thousands in your organization, Delve will pick that up and then be able to surface that to you when you read that acronym in a completely different document and you didn't know what it meant. Then there'll be a thing on the side that says, well, actually, this acronym is described in this other document over here, or is in like an email that somebody sent you, and it means this. So that's really cool. That's really genuinely useful. I'm really looking forward to seeing that come and go GA and be able to use. So it's coming. So that particular functionality called acronyms is coming. It's coming to online first, and it's coming to subscribers in 2018. So super interested to look out for that. There's some other stuff they're doing as well that is less. I don't mean inventive. Like, it's just not like those first two things I looked at and thought they're really cool because I haven't heard of anyone doing them before. There's some other stuff they're doing that I have kind of heard people doing before. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. It's good that Microsoft are doing it because it's important. It needs to be done. So it's things like Outlook telling you when you need to leave to go for a meeting because it knows the travel distances, it knows the traffic, and that's kind of things that we've seen people do before. But it's, the Googles and the Apples. But it's very good that Microsoft are playing in this space as well. Pulling text out of images, which is good as well, but again we're seeing it being done before, but again good that it's becoming it's less novelty, it's becoming more mainstream, consumer accessible in Office, and that's really important. That point there of taking what you can currently do today, and yes, you can currently scan your receipts, have it go into text, pull out the key phrases, like that technology all exists today, and you can get it and you can do it. Loads and loads of people don't because it's not super accessible. It's not built into the tooling that they use every day, and making that happen is really important. So it's good that Microsoft are doing this, even though it's not quite as headline grabbing, big bang wow as the other things, which were pretty, like that I just talked about, the Excel stuff and the Word stuff, which are cool and interesting to me because they're new and I hadn't heard of them before. All of the things that are in this blog post are important, regardless of how cool you think they are. And that's probably an important thing that I need to remember as well. It's an important message as well that it's easy to get caught up in the cool. What will really move the needle is what's genuinely useful to consumers and accessible. All right, finally, the final thing I want to talk to you about, or just tell you about really and leave you with, is the second episode of the UC Inside Track podcast, which is the new podcast set up by Pat Richard to talk unified communication space. And in this episode, Pat is talking to Tom Arbuthnot, so disclaimer, fellow employee at Modality, but Tom's talking to Pat all about two big kind of pillar themes really: Skype for Business versus Teams, which is a conversation we keep having, but is useful and interesting to get it from lots of different people's perspectives. So it's good to get it from Tom's kind of point of view, and talking about some other things as well. Accessing your network, assessing your network, in terms of kind of quality. There's some other stuff in there as well around CCE and some stuff with connectors and Teams. So definitely worth a listen and add it to your podcast playlist, as you can this one if you want, if you didn't know that. So I know I put all this to YouTube, but I also put it out to a podcast as well if you want to get it. If you don't want to sit down and watch it, I try and make sure that when I'm kind of doing these weekly updates, they're consumable, like audio only as well. So there is a podcast as well. It's on iTunes, or you can search for it as well. It's on a couple. I use Overcast as my podcast reader, so I know it's picked up on there as well, which might make it easier. So there's that, if that's useful. Anyway, enough from me. It's nearly 20 minutes long, so it's definitely time for me to go. So have a lovely week. If you don't catch the next one of these before Christmas, then have a lovely Christmas. But I will be recording another one. Let me just check the date. So I will be recording another one. It'll be on the 22nd of December. But fully understand if you miss it, in which case, Merry Christmas to you, and I will speak to you soon.